Hello everyone, welcome to our episode 6 of the Malaysian SNR mentorship program. So the SNR stands for support and resistance, but this is a new way of trading support and resistance, something that involves wide scales of pattern and also helps us to understand the institutional method which we call smart money concept. So for those of you who are new to the mentorship series, this is episode 6. And from episode 1 to episode 5, I already gave enough insight to understanding what we call support and resistance level. There's different types of support and resistance level. We have patterns from the Quasimodo pattern, which I'll be showing you guys in the future, to other patterns like the SBR and the RBS, which is the support breaks become resistance and the resistance becomes support. These are patterns I've already spoke about in previous episodes, so you could go check them out if you need to know more about them. On today's episode, I'm going to be discussing about a very unique topic, which is looking into fresh and tested, or we can say unfresh key levels. So from what I've explained in the previous episode, we understand that support and resistance deal with multiple time frames, which we call storyline. So to understand the storyline of one time frame, you have to go to a time frame above, because you understand that we refine key levels from one time frame to another. So this is on the monthly time frame, which I refined this key level from. As you can see, if we go to the line chart, which I've showed you guys on previous episodes how to use line chart to identify support and resistance. This would be a V formation, which would be what we categorize as a support. And then if we refine down to the weekly time frame, we would have what we have on the screen. But what I need you guys to understand is that using support and resistance with smart money concept is a lot easier, which is what I do on a regular basis, which is why you see this whole area identified. This would be what we consider as an order block using smart money concept. But this area here would be what we consider as the support level. That is because if we use the line chart as well, you can see that that is where the candlestick formation ends. So now what we consider a fresh level. Just like how we have another block and then we have a week into the other block, would say this is already tested. It's no longer a fresh order block. It's the same thing as what we have here. As you can see, price, the week came down, price tested this key level here, which is known as the weekly storyline, went up to make a breakout. Now, I need you guys to also understand that there's a very key note I need you guys to know from episode 5, where I spoke about storyline. For a storyline to be confirmed from one time frame to another, since this is a monthly time frame, price has to break a weekly structure on the weekly time frame. So to be able to confirm this as a confirmed storyline, okay? So this is coming from the monthly time frame, but it has to break structure from a time frame below to confirm the storyline on the weekly time frame. So once this time frame, just like how you have market structure, once the structure is broken and price forms a new higher high, you expect price to form a new structure. So once you confirm the area of interest from the monthly, you go down to the weekly, and then you refine to find your area of interest. And I need you guys to understand that smart money concept and support and resistance, the new support and resistance, are not really that different. So I'm not teaching you anything new from what I'm already teaching you guys on my YouTube channel. I'm just giving you guys insights to be able to understand the Malaysian SNR properly, and then to be able to take out key concepts like the way they use their trend line and also how they identify key levels to get snipe entries. So this will be what we consider as a tested key level. So price tested this level here, so this would be considered unfresh, and then price broke structure, came back down to give a retest. So this is a beautiful example to give you guys as what we consider as an unfresh key level, but as you can see, it was still valid. This is to tell you that what we do as trading is unpredictable and price could do anything. So let me give you guys another example here. We have a buy to sell candle here, which would act as a resistance, right? So price went back up, tested this level, then came back down. And then price came back up again to break this level. So this was now a resistance becomes support, right? So this is a resistance now become support. And then price came back down to test the level here again before going back up. Now, would we consider this as a fresh level or a tested level, since we already had a test here when price tested the resistance? This would still be considered as a fresh level because, as you can see, this is no longer a resistance. This is now a resistance becomes support. This is a different formation from what we have here, but this is also a beautiful example of what we consider as a tested level. So this would be a flip, so this will be a resistance becomes support flip zone, similar to what we have here. But this is a different scenario. As you can see, this was fresh, but what we had there is a different case. What price did was that price came back down, tested this key level here. As you can see, this is a buy to sell candle, a resistance, and the price came back and tested the resistance here, went back up and came back down to give multiple tests again. So this will be considered as an unfresh key level. Yes, using refining, that is if we go to the lower time frame, we could see an area of interest within this zone where price tested. But that would be if we were refining to a lower time frame. But the key point I need you guys to understand here is how you identify tested and fresh zone. Now, the fresh is obviously stronger and much, much recommended than the tested level. As you can see, price made a very messy price action, which most likely would have caused a stop hunt here. Okay, so it's always recommended to use the fresh levels and is mostly trusted when the level is fresh. But once it's tested, there's no certainty to what could happen. We have a similar area here, which we had as a fresh buy to sell candle, fresh resistance. But as you can see, price did not validate that. Price pierced through it and then made a reaction instead. So what you get from this note is that is because it's fresh doesn't mean it's certainly going to hold. Sometimes because it's fresh is not a guarantee. It's still a game of probability and anything is possible. Okay, so you have to be very, very cautious and maintain your risks to reward ratios properly so that you don't get to lose your account on a single trade. Now, I'm going to give you guys some keynotes before I close the section for today. I need you guys to understand that before marking a zone, you must establish the context of the trend and market structure, meaning that you have to understand what's going on from the weekly down to the daily. And then you have to understand what's going on from the daily down to the 4-hour time frame. So if we should go to the daily time frame here, and then try to understand the price action from what we have been doing, you have a lot of insights to price action in a different way to how it looks on the weekly time frame, right? So it becomes more clearer and you can see some reactions that were not visible. As you can see here, this area of interest is now visible on this point, okay? We can see multiple key levels here that we could identify. And I won't want to make it too complex for you guys to understand because I need you guys to understand that these are multiple series. We're going to be taking it slow and steady so you can be able to process how to mark out these zones properly and how to get key levels. So let me give you guys an insight if you're making analysis, how to follow your strategy. Number one, first of all, you have to identify the trend and confirm the storyline, like what I did with this zone, how I found this from the monthly time frame. Secondly, you have to identify the resistance, the obstacles to this zone. For example, when we identified this zone, we went on to, look into what was going on this price action. If I was on a live trade from this point, this would be an obstacle we'd have to look into. So when you hear the word obstacle, you might get confused, but this would be the next topic. That would be our episode 7, where we look into obstacles and understanding storyline much better. So let's leave it at that. And on the next episode, we'll look into it. Number 3 would be setting rules. Like I said earlier, nothing is certain. Because a level is fresh doesn't mean price is certainly going to respect it. So you have to be very, very careful. So whatever you do, you have to manage your risks and give yourself certain limitations. For example, what I do is that I do not take more than 2 trades in a day to limit me to a certain amount of setup. So it has to meet certain criteria for it to be considered a valid setup to trade. For example, when we talk about breakouts, it's also going to be an insightful topic, and that would be in a future episode. I would give you guys insights to how you use breakouts like this to understand entries and how to get entries on a lower time frame. And number 4 would be if price fails to test your zone, It's easier for you to go back to the higher time frame to understand what was going on or what is going on the storyline. As the storyline changed, as price hit an obstacle zone, is it likely that its structure is shifting? These are things you look on the higher time frame. So when the lower time frame gets complex, you go up to the higher time frame to understand what's going on. So when you see something like this on your zone and you're trying to consider if this is still a valid zone or not, just know that this is just going to be considered a low probability zone because it's no longer fresh. It has been tested earlier, and there's every tendency that price might pierce through it or price might respect it, similar to what we had here, as this zone got multiple testing before price made a sweep of liquidity before moving bullish. We had this one here, price made a simple test, and price went back up. So nothing is certain and everything is a game of probability. And that would be all for this episode. Thank you, and I'll see you on the next episode where we discuss about obstacles. Bye.